Hello, and thank you for joining us for the story behind the story, where readers and authors connect. I'm Reese Ryan, author of sexy, emotional, romantic fiction featuring lots of family drama, surprising secrets, and a cast of complicated, sometimes messy characters. And as you can see, my guest today is Denise Williams, who's going to be chatting with us about 3 reasons why both readers and authors should get into short fiction. So, you've seen Denise because we just going for it today, and I usually bring the guest on later, but I'm like so messed up today. So I am so glad to be starting the season again, where I get to talk to my author friends, and readers get to come and join us and have a conversation with us. So that is what we're doing today, and I just feel like getting ready to do it. So we're just gonna get into this topic of short fiction, but first, we want to meet you, Denise. So for anybody who is not familiar with you or your writing, tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you write.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm Denise Williams. I use she, her pronouns, and I write contemporary romance and rom-coms. And my debut came out in 2020, which was a weird year to start publishing. And my 6th book just came out in September. So I've been pretty busy. All of my books feature a lot of banter, I'd say real world kind of complicated issues, and swoony cinnamon roll heroes. And so that's a little bit about what I write, and I can talk more about my books later. But I've written now a combination of, I have 3 published novels, 3 published novellas, and I have 3 pieces coming out this year. 2 of one is a collection of novellas, and then 1 is short fiction. So lots to talk about in terms of writing short fiction and long fiction and fiction that will never see the light of day if we get to that.
There's always that. Just want to say good evening to everybody. Hey, Mama Tony. And so for anybody who's watching us from Facebook, you'll see, if you scroll down to the bottom of the description, you'll see I have a link where you have to actually click on that link, and you can go to StreamYard and give them, or either you go to Facebook or StreamYard, one or the other, and you give Facebook permission to show your name and your avatar. Otherwise, we can see Facebook users said, "Hi, ladies, Happy New Year, Happy New Year to you as well." But we can't tell who it is. Hey, Caitlin, how are you? So if you want us to be able to see who you are in your avatar when you make your comments and stuff, be sure to give permission at the bottom of that description there. So, all right. So I know I personally love swingy cinnamon roll heroes. Denise, that's definitely my cup of tea. So
They melt. I love it.
I probably write a lot less. For me, it's a lot more rare for me to write kind of like an alpha character than to write sort of either a cinnamon roll or kind of like omni, like in the middle. So, good evening. How are you, Joy? So I love that. So tell us a little bit about your journey of how you got started as a writer.
Yeah. So I've always loved to write. I think in my bio, I say I wrote my first book in the 2nd grade. It was called I Hate You. And then shortly after its sequel, I Still Hate You. And I've always written horrible poetry, and that I discovered was still on the internet from like 1998 recently, which was surprising, and it's awful. Short stories. Like I just always loved to write. It was very much a comforting place for me. But I never planned to be a writer. I'm an academic by training. I have a PhD in education. And so that's where my writing was happening. And in 2016, I'd recently had my son, and 2016 was, doing its thing if you go back a few years. And I was overwhelmed. I felt like I was buried in momming and work and life, and I'd lost touch with parts of myself that I really missed. And so one night when my son went to sleep, I've been blessed with a good sleeper his whole life, and I just started writing what I thought would be a short story, short fiction. And that just felt so good. I felt so reconnected with myself, so like energized. And so I kept coming back every night and writing more and more and more. And that turned into my debut, How to Fail at Flirting. And when I finished it, I thought, man, this is maybe kind of good. I'll show it to my friends. Maybe I'll do something with it. And my friends like gently and lovingly and so caringly told me that it wasn't. And so I edited, I learned more about
Everybody
writing. I
needs
didn't know
friends like
anything
that.
about
Let me tell
writing
you.
fiction. And so made some writer friends who less gently and less kindly told me it still wasn't good. And eventually, just edited and then published that book in 2020. And that for me was just, and that still for me is kind of wild. Like I wrote a book, I wrote several books, they're on shelves. That's just,
Yeah.
it's always like a dream that felt so far off and so far away and so not what I was doing and what my training was. And now it's part of my career. Like I have two careers right now. And so that's kind of my journey. And so I love to say that, especially some of those decisions with the first and second book were, very planned out and plotted, but I fell backwards into publishing. Like I didn't know what I was doing. And most days I feel like I still don't. So if there's questions about that, feel free to throw them out there. But again, I came into fiction very late. I was 38 when my first book came out, 37, 38. And so I got started, I think, relatively late in the game in terms of writing.
And I've got you even because I don't think I was 43 when my first book came out. But you actually, I was going to say that actually was I feel like it was pretty fast because you started writing in like 2016 and you got published in 2020. That's like 4 years for your debut. That was really good. And then for it to be such a good debut that did so well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And I run a seminar on like empowering women in speech and things like that. And so I always tell people not to say, I got lucky. So I was about to say I got lucky. So I stopped myself. But I think I did write the right book at the right time because that was my first published novel, but it was also the first novel I ever finished. Aside from one half-formed nano project that will never ever see the light of day.
Yeah, that's something in itself because most of us have like those first novels that are like what they call under the bed, and because I definitely have a couple, and so there's like definitely one that I want to publish that one so bad, but it needs so much work, and I'm just always so busy with something else, so. Understandable.
It's interesting because writing is just so, and publishing, not so much writing, like publishing is just so, I don't know, random sometimes. Like you find the right editor, the right agent, or the right reader that likes that book at that moment because of whatever. And then it goes from there. And so I do feel lucky in that I found those right people who wanted to champion that book at that time.
Yeah, that can make a huge difference as well. Find the right publisher, the right person, the right book at the right time is just all those things kind of aligning in addition to, having immense talent. Let's not forget that.
Yes, obviously I'm amazing. So there's that. And what was kind of cool along that journey is I write academically. And so I did a chapter for a research book that came out like right before my novel came out. And so I imagine like 7 people have bought that one or read it, but it was cool to have both of my kind of book babies like right there at the same time. And to have that, which includes a lot of statistics and pretty much no kissing. And then my debut come out, which is like kind of the opposite. So
that's wild. Happy New Year to you too, Caitlin. And hey, Jennifer, how are you? And I'm just going to say again for somebody who might have come later, if you're on Facebook, good evening to you. But if you want us to be able to see your name and who you are, you'll need to make sure that you hit go into the description at the bottom of the description on the Facebook where the video is posted to be able to select that you want us or give permission for us to see your avatar and your name as well. Hey, Shay, Brown Book Series, Shay baby. Happy New Year to you as well. And I cannot wait to catch up on your shows, Shay, because Shay has an amazing YouTube series of all.
I got to be a guest, and it was like
she's amazing.
Best conversation ever.
Yeah, she's amazing. And so anyway, so let's talk about, do you take this man? Because this is the story behind the story. So we like to get to the story behind the story that you wrote. So Do You Take This Man is about a divorce attorney turned unlikely wedding officiant and the wedding event planner that she bumps heads with. So give us a little bit of the story behind the story of how you came up with not only the premise but the characters. And I kind of like that in this story, you kind of reverse what we would have expected. The divorce attorney who's turned efficient is the female character, whereas the wedding event planner is the male character. So I thought that was a little bit of a twist on what people would might normally expect, what's typical. So tell us a little bit about how you came up with the premise for this.
Yeah, it's kind of odd because I think books sort of usually come together kind of from a lot of different spaces. I actually know the date, time, and approximate like geographical location where I was when this came up. So the one and only time I got to go to Romance Writers of America was in 2019 before the organization did its thing, before COVID and all of that. That was my first year and my only year. But it took place over my birthday. And so on my birthday, I went out to lunch with my editor and my agent. It's one of the only times I met them in person aside from the night before. And so we were walking into the restaurant in Manhattan, and my agent had met up with me to walk in together. And I mentioned that I was going to be officiating a wedding later in the summer. I've done that since about 2007. I've been ordained to perform weddings. And so I mentioned I was doing that. And she said, "Oh, that'd be a good idea for a rom-com." And I went, "Oh my God, yes." And so we had our lunch and it was wonderful and lovely. And we actually came up with the title for How to Fail at Flirting at that lunch. And then I went back to the hotel and I wrote out what would be the first chapter of Do You Take This Man? And so that's where that premise came. And it was July 26th. It was 2019 in outside that restaurant in Manhattan. So I know exactly where that came from, but I love officiating weddings and it's something that I do. And I love the idea of writing a character who was not nice. And RJ is probably my most divisive heroine. People really love her or really hate her because she suffers no fools. Like, she is a Black woman and an attorney, and she lives in the world we live in, and she knows who she is, and she knows what she wants, and she's very guarded against love, but that's kind of how she moves through the world, which I thought was so honest that felt like so much like me. And then the hero is my classic broken cinnamon roll, but a little cocky. And I didn't even think about kind of that gender expectation of him being a wedding planner and a man. But I love how that kind of balanced out. And that isn't really even a plot point. It just is like, that's just the job he has. But you do see kind of some different dynamics there. So I had so much fun coming up with the premise of that. I wrote it. It's my pandemic book. So I wrote it with Paw Patrol as the soundtrack because I was at home every day working while my son was 3 feet away. And I needed a break. So I wrote all the sex scenes first. I think there's like 9 of them in there. And then there's a few that didn't make it into
Wait
the
a minute.
book.
Wait. Stop right there. There are 9 sex scenes in that
I
book?
think there's 9. Some are more explicit and detailed than others. And then they're not even like deleted scenes. I just like was writing fanfic of my own book while I was writing the book. So there's definitely some like extra spicy scenes that are just bonus content that I'll release at some point. But yeah, I wrote all of those first and then went back and wrote all of the other pieces. So that was a little bit different in this book, but the premise really is, it's a kind of a fun enemies to lovers, enemies with benefits. They have a lot of sex. They go to a lot of weddings. They figure out how to break down their walls in typical romance fashion. But I dedicated this book to the ones who think they're hard to love. And both of these characters think that. And I think a lot of people maybe believe that about themselves or have believed that about themselves at some point. And so it's really figuring out like, oh, I'm not hard to love. I just have to find that right person who's going to connect with me. Yeah, I'll share. Can I say threesome on YouTube? I don't know. There's a threesome scene that I wrote that has no like logical context in the book, but I just wrote it anyway because it's fun. I'll have to share that at some point.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I love that. And it's wild. I don't remember meeting you there, but that was my first RWA.
I don't know if we did or not. Maybe
Yeah,
at like the Black Romance Author Network or something.
Yeah, but that was my first one as well. There in New York, and that's where I met my agent and editors for the first time as well. So that's kind of wild. Okay, so I love that. Like I said, I really love the twist on it, and I just think the premise is different.
Oh, thank you. I just
And
like I said, I had so much fun writing it. It's very different from my other characters,
Enemies to
and
Lovers is
it's
always so
fun.
much fun. I find that that's one of the most fun ones for me is that kind of lovers where you kind of
Well, I
follow.
had these stickers made. I designed these, but and I didn't write this quote. I found it somewhere, but it says, "If you can't stand me, you're welcome to sit." And that is so the heroine and kind of so the energy that she brings to the book, including the hero. And so I'll send you one.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so from there, so we've got those, and now let's talk about Love and Other Flight Delays. So,
Yeah.
that is for anybody who doesn't know, it's a collection of novellas that are centered around romances that that happens at the airport or whatever. So, what made you decide to write these stories about love connected to the airport, and to be, instead of do it as a novel or a novel like your other books, deciding to do it as a collection of stories instead?
Yeah, this is, I would say, one of those publishing moments where I sort of fell backwards into it. I was approached about writing a novella, and they wanted it small town, and they said, well, maybe it'd be nice if it had an animal in it. And I was like, I have never in my life lived in a small town. I don't know. That's not normally what I write. And so I was thinking about like how to get that small town energy and really thinking about like community. And I love the airport. I've always loved flying. And that idea of this nexus of stories all being in one place, that's just what I always think about when I'm going through the airport. I also have always thought I would run into my ex-boyfriend, a specific ex-boyfriend, while I was in the airport. It has never happened. I am married now. It's been years. But I still always think I'm going to run into him. And I don't know. I think there's just something so romantic about that small community. And so I pitched it as, okay, well, what if the small town is this airport terminal and it's the people who work there and some of the people who fly through, and there's a dog. So in the first book, the heroine owns an airport dog grooming salon or pet grooming salon. I'm 99% sure that is not a real thing, but I thought it should be a real thing. So for
I
romance
wouldn't
reasons,
doubt that. I
isn't it,
wouldn't
right?
doubt
People
that.
travel with animals. It's a whole thing. So, and then she meets kind of her Diet Coke break, the frequent flyer who she always sees going through the airport. And he ends up being a romance novelist who is in need of a muse, and she needs some practice dating. And so they kind of do their fake romance that turns into a real romance thing while they're in the airport. And that one started as, all three of these started as audiobooks and then were released as ebooks, and now they'll come out in print. And so the narrators for all of these were so good. January Lavoie and Shane East did this one. And I would listen to either of them read the phone book, and I would listen to Shane East read the phone book while I was in bed. So that was a lot of fun. So that's kind of the premise of that first one, and that's really where it came from. And then Berkeley said they wanted three of them. So I thought about what were some other stories I could tell in that setting of the airport. So the love connection has the dog, has the pet, and then I abandoned pets because they're a lot of work. And the second one is there's just Black romance, and that is the missed connection. And in that one, two chemistry professors have kind of a grumpy sunshine arrangement. They meet in the airport. They're strangers. They have this kind of magical serendipitous night, and then they part. Happy New Year. And then a few months later, learn that they are actually academic rivals, and they have to travel together on a 5-city tour of universities. So they don't get along. They have different outlooks. He's very grumpy. She's very sunshiny. And of course, they fall in love. But along the way, do a little bit of smashing of the patriarchy, because I just like to sprinkle that in there. And so kind of challenge some assumptions in the academy, especially for this Black bi woman who is very like effusive and happy and challenging kind of the stereotypes that she runs into in academia. And so the misconnection, I think it's really funny. It's very uplifting, but it's kind of quirky. There's some statistics jokes in there. And I did like a 7-hour crash course on chemistry to write like 9 lines of dialogue. So if you are a chemist, I hope that you read this book. And if I got things wrong about catalytic chemistry, don't tell me, because I was really proud of that. So that's the second one. And Gia is the best friend of Bennett, the hero in the first one. So that's kind of their connection. And then the third one is the sweetest connection. It's the last one. And it is best friends to lovers. and you have two young people who work in the airport. Tegan works in a candy shop and has gone back to school and is just high energy, ready to go. And Silas is a little bit more careful. He works in customer service in the airport. They meet in college on a Zoom call, which I just thought was sort of funny to write, reflecting to before the pandemic, but that was my own little joke for me. And so they're best friends. And with 5 days left before she leaves the country to go study abroad, they find a love letter. And then they have this mystery of figuring out who in the airport this love letter belongs to. And of course, along the way, figure out their own feelings for each other. So all of them are really kind of different in the characters and the energy and the tropes. And that was, I mean, I'll get into that, but I think that was kind of what was fun about writing short fiction, is it was trying on these different tropes and these different types of characters. And they're all connected through the airport, and they have some commonalities, but the stories themselves really are kind of standalone. They have sort of a different energy to them.
I love that. All right, so now that we're talking about these short stories, so for perhaps anyone who is a reader who's never really considered the idea of short stories, what are 3 reasons you would suggest that they should consider getting into short fiction?
Well, one is that they're short, and I don't know about anybody else, but my attention span is shot. And sometimes I can sit down and really dig into a novel. And sometimes I need something that is a 2-hour read, or a novella, or something a little shorter. It's more digestible, but I also think that when life is crazy, or even when it's not, just whenever we need that, it can be a really good brain break. But they're shorter, and you can, especially if you're at the end of the year and you're trying to crunch that like reading goal, I think that's another benefit, I guess, of shorter. But more that it's digestible in that smaller piece. And so if you're have a lot going on, you can still escape into a story, but it doesn't require as much long-term attention. And so, I think that that's part of it too. But the other piece I'd say is it's a great way to try out something new. I'm pretty precious with my reading time because I don't, it's not unlimited. And there are things I want to read. There are subgenres I want to get into, or this happens a lot with like the spicy books. I'm like, am I interested in that? Maybe. But you can try out something in a short form, and it's a good way to kind of test those waters if your time is limited, or you haven't found that full-length novel that you're really excited about. And so again, maybe that's a new trope, a new subgenre, a new genre altogether, or just trying something a little bit different. But I do like the idea of not putting so much time into finishing a whole novel when I'm trying something new, because I feel like that I'm still reading. I'm also still trying out new to me authors, but it's not as much time, and I can kind of get more of that and figure out if I like it, if I love it. Yeah. Hint, with the spicy books, I usually do, and then I get more. That's me.
Two additional reasons that, for me personally, that I love short fiction is, especially like we were just talking before we went on air about feeling like we've been on deadlines, for over a year straight.
Yes.
And so for me, I've also discovered no matter how busy I am, I still need to find some time to read, to replenish the well. So for me, it's better for if I can get in and read some short stories and feel like I can I've accomplished something because I've read these 3 novellas, in the time that I was able to sneak in when I'm not writing, as opposed to having this really long book that I'm going to be reading little bits of over time. So that's one of the reasons too for me that I like having that shorter form, and I've started to read a lot more of those in recent years. Since I've been super busy, I like being able to read inked completion. and so novellas let me do that. And also it's a great way to be introduced to other authors, because I think you talked about introducing them to different subgenres or tropes or whatever that they maybe haven't tried before. But it's also a great way to connect with the authors, or try out an author that maybe you've been thinking about, or just even discover ones that you didn't know at all. So that's 2 bonus reasons. So that's 5 reasons.
And to the time, I think about things when you have a context. Like it was a little bit longer, but I had like a 6-hour drive recently, or 5-hour drive, or a 3-hour drive, where I'm an audiobook person, so I can go and be like, okay, well, this novella is going to get me there and back, and then I'll be done with the story, so I don't have to hold out. Same thing, for like a flight or something along those lines, where you just want to be able to really get into a story and dig into it and maybe finish it in the time, this kind of limited time that you have. And so I think that's another good reason to try them out. They're less
Yeah.
expensive usually, and so
Right.
and I think libraries, and sometimes they're available on Wattpad. I mean, there's so many different places where you can find different kinds of short fiction, that there's a lot of options there too.
Yeah, for sure. And so now we've talked about several reasons why short fiction, and we also we talked about novellas, but there are a lot of other places that you can find in other forms of short fiction. And maybe after we talk about the author aspect, we'll talk about some of those. So I don't want to step into that. But short fiction can also offer a number of benefits to authors. And so, what are 3 reasons you would recommend that authors consider adding short fiction to their arsenal if they haven't done that already?
The first is maybe a little bit similar for readers, and this is what it was for me anyway, was trying out new tropes. Grumpy Sunshine is the main trope in my second novella, The Misconnection, and I used to hate that trope. I told everybody, like, this is one I'll never write. I don't like to read it, and there were some specific reasons for that. But I was also like, can I write this? Can I write friends to lovers? Like, I've never written those before, and so it was fun to write them in that shorter format, just for me to kind of test those skills. But also, I think when you're writing short fiction, your writing has to be pretty tight. Your plotting has to be tight. Your characters have to be together, because you don't have as much space to
Right.
meander. I love a subplot. Anybody who's ever read my novels, that is not shocking to you. Like, I love a good subplot, develop some side characters, give them their own love story. Like, I'm all in for that. And in short fiction, you really don't have the space to do that. I think the so and that leads into the second one, which is, I think when you're writing short fiction, it's a good way to hone some of your craft, in terms of plotting, in terms of your story development, in terms of your prose. I mean, really, in terms of everything, it just has to be tighter. It has to work more, or not more cohesively, but you have less space to make it work cohesively. And so I think for writers, it's a good exercise. And whether that is writing a novella or a short story, or chapter in an anthology, or something that, an essay or blog post even, it's that kind of test for yourself, or that way to, I don't know, kind of hone the things you're doing. And I think that's good. For me too, less so with the novellas, because those were under a book contract and I had deadlines. So those were not a brain break. But I know for me, I write short fiction, usually spicy, all the time. And it's a brain break. It is a time to kind of step away from this story that I've been working on, that's already kind of tightly constructed in my mind, or something that's under contract or on deadline, or even that I know other people are going to read. I write a ton of short fiction that is just fun, for me. And so if that is something that as a writer kind of replenishes your well, and
Yeah.
you can just write something short, and maybe you'll publish it, maybe other people will read it, maybe they won't. But I know for me, that just fills up my cup. And again, I love writing spicy stuff. And so that's what a lot of mine is. But it's also just like sweet shorts, or stories that aren't even finished, and just ideas that are pieces of something. But I do think that short format gives you a little bit more leeway to just put things down on paper when you're maybe feeling burned out. And I know we were talking about this again, like being on deadline forever. I definitely felt burned out. And I sat down at a writing retreat a few weeks ago, and I just wrote something for fun. Again, I still don't know if anybody will ever read that. But for me, it just got me back into that headspace of being a writer and loving writing and being excited about writing, excited about characters, to go back to my books that are under contract. And I think short fiction gives you so many options for that, in addition to diversifying your revenue stream, and doing some of those pieces. I haven't done as much of that yet beyond the novella, just because the way my contract is set up. But I think for so many people that works so well, especially when they're able to hybrid or indie publish, where they can have some different types of stories and different lengths of stories that might reach different audiences.
Yeah. And I feel like, especially if you are, writing trad, and, you have things that you have to conform to or whatever, or a line you have to conform. It is nice to be able to have, a place where you can do whatever the hell you want.
Oh, my extra drive is full of that.
You know what I'm saying? So, that's a whole another conversation I'm having in 2 weeks with D.L. White about indie publishing, being able to do whatever the hell you want. So,
Okay, I gotta tune in for that because I'm
those little short,
interested.
yeah.
Well, and
So
the
those
other
short,
piece to that I mentioned, and I got to be part of my first anthology this year. It'll come out in May. It's called Even If the Sky Is Falling, and Taj McCoy edited, and it's basically Love Actually meets your favorite 90s disaster movie. So all of these different couples are sheltering in place during what they think is the end of the world. It's not, but they all think it is. And so it's like 15,000 words. It's a short story, I think safely I'd say. And that was so much fun to write. I think I wrote that in like 2 weeks, and it's very sexy. I think it's very sexy. It has all of my kind of academic rivals to lovers energy, but that was so much fun because I didn't have to come up with the premise of, the big story that was already structured. And it was just creating this little mini world with these two characters, and it got to center on them. And again, once I settled down my love of subplots, that was a lot of fun to write. And it did in some ways feel like a brain break, even though that was under contract and it's going to be published through Harlequin is where it's coming out. But that was a lot of fun. And so I'm excited to see everybody's stories. I've read a few of them so far.
That's awesome. And that is another nice thing about shorts, because the not the very first novella I did, that one I did on my own, but the ones I did after that, and I did one for my publisher, the first of which was a trope that I had said to I would never write. Secret baby.
Oh.
So,
yeah, I'm pretty firm on never writing that one, but I love that you did.
I was firm on never reading it or writing it, and then I came up with an idea for a story that was a secret baby. But the twist on it was that it wasn't that, it was the aunt that he got in a relationship with, not the mother who didn't tell him.
Okay.
So because that is a very tricky one.
So the one I really want to write is to take
like a couple others. So
I wanted one that's a take on the rake and the ingenue, but it's a secret rake. So like the ingenue is actually a rake, so they're both rakes, but like it's so it's like secret baby, but it's secret rake. That's what I want to write.
So it does give you a chance to do so much fun like that. But the other novellas that I did were collaborations with other people. So and that was super fun to get to, like you said, somebody else kind of comes up with the overall concept, and you just have to come up with your story in it. And so for an author especially, that can be really great to be able to have an opportunity to do some kind of collaboration with other authors, whether it's an anthology, a single book with several short stories in it, like you're saying that you all are doing, or like what we did, which was individual novellas or whatever, that were all part of this one overall theme. So it can be a lot of fun, and the way for you to stretch your writing muscles and do something different and fun. And like you were saying about the revenue streams, there's just so many different ways you can use much shorter fiction than a novella, like more like a flash fiction kind of length, whether it's a teaser in your newsletter or to attract new readers to your newsletter or whatever, or just a teaser or giveaway or whatever that you can do. Some people do them for their Patreon groups or whatever. They do Patreon shorts every month for readers, or every quarter or whatever. So there's a lot of different ways that authors can use short fiction like that. And I know for me, since I write category primarily right now, and since now that I started writing single title, I can tend to write too long now. So I've had books that were supposed to be 50K max that when I wrote up to 80 and had to dial it back. so that
this one was 99,998 words when I tuned it in, and I know that because they said it could not be over 100.
Oh my god! So like, but those can be also fun things like cut scenes or whatever, deleted scenes that you can use as to give to readers who are parts of your Facebook group or your newsletter or whatever. So those are other ways that you can use those kind of like short pieces of fiction, or you can just write something new. So
And I don't know
those are
about
all
you,
kind of
but like I
fun ways.
have so much fun writing those. Like I love my characters and then I don't want to let them go. So I'm like, I'm writing their wedding scene for me. So yeah, I'll put it out for
Yeah.
my newsletter subscribers, but I wrote this for
Yes.
me.
The writing scenes like that can be super fun too. So because I'm doing that for a novella that I wrote already, and I want to do some bonus content and a new cover and put that out next year. So just little things like that you can do that are fun. Veronica Lockett asked the question, where do you get your ideas for your books? We know the one where you got that one from. So where are some other general ideas of where you get your ideas from for your stories?
For me, it really varies. I joked with a friend because I kind of see the world in meet cutes. Like wherever I am, I think about what if somebody fell in love here? And that, I'm at my kid's soccer game or like in the grocery store, or I got a mammogram this morning and I was like, what if? So I kind of just look at like the world in meet cutes, and I'm kind of always thinking about like, how could somebody fall in love in this space? And when I love the idea, then I just kind of write it down. And most of those are half formed ideas that I'll never touch. One of my files just says gummy bear pirate ship. I don't know what that means, but when I remember it, it could be a bestseller. So I kind of just write all those down and set them aside. But as I'm moving through the world, I kind of just think about that. For my novels, they really all come to me a little bit differently. The first one I kind of talked about already. My second novel is centers a fat woman who's a journalist, and it's her reviewing a body positive fitness app, and she falls in love with her online personal trainer, and that's the fastest way to fall. And that one I came up with when I was at a retreat with women of color at my institution. I work at a university, and we had the students do a self-reflection exercise. And I hate self-reflection exercises personally, but since I was making people do it, I had to do it myself. And we asked the question something along the lines of, what was the time you felt strong? And for me, I thought about being in the gym, and I thought about like crushing this workout and hopping off the treadmill or the elliptical and just having that feeling of like, I just did that. Like I could do anything. And what would it be like to fall in love in that moment? I was married at the time, so I was not like trying to find the love of my life at the gym, but I, again, had that moment of what would that be like? And that's kind of where that book started. It was that premise. It was that idea. And I knew the woman character, and then the hero came to me pretty quickly too. And then I talked about our chain marriage for all the sex scenes first. And so I know some people always start with character, always start with premise. I'm kind of all over the board, but I will let everybody know when that gummy bear pirate ship book comes to fruition. Yes. But if I get an idea, I write it down. I make it its own file.
You figure out what the gummy bear pirate ship stuff is all about. I know for me, definitely, like most of the time, I couldn't tell you where I came up with the idea for something, because it's just like, I don't know, little pieces here and there or whatever. Or once that first story in a series comes up, then the other stuff just kind of happens organically or whatever. But the only thing I can say, without a doubt, how I came up with it is the Bourbon Brothers series, and the combination of learning about Nearest Green, who taught Jack Daniels how to make whiskey, and also watching The Man Who Built America with my husband, and it kind of, wanting to combine this idea of what if he had been able to build his own empire, which his family has since created Uncle Nearest Bourbon. So that is happening. But yeah, that was how I came up with that. But pretty much everything else, I can never remember. So I said, from now on, I'm going to start writing this stuff down, because when people ask, I'm like, I don't know. And we cannot see who you are, because you have to give Facebook permission. In the description, you'll see the link where you can give permission to see your face and your name. But the comment, I love anthologies. So do I. I've come to appreciate them more in recent months, or in years, actually, just anthologies, being able to see, work by different authors and stuff, or to, like Denise said, to explore different tropes or subgenres that I don't normally read. It's giving me a chance to dive into those a little. So that's That's been fun.
Well,
And
and
especially like
you
when they're themed like to us to a certain thing or whatever, it's kind of fun. So
Well, and also I know about it because I follow or already like or read an author or two who are in it. And so then, you do get to try new authors and like see what their writing is like. And I think often like discover authors that are new to you because they have something in common with that author that you already like, that you already read.
right, right. That is nice. So tell us, we know it's kind of strange too with with the anthology. Like it almost kind of went backwards compared to how we normally see books come out, whereas they're normally like maybe they come out, as a book and then ebook and then audio, whatever. You're started as
Yeah.
audio and then it went to ebook and now it's going to be available in paper. And so, but tell us what's next for you. So and I should make that clear that book is coming out in March.
Yeah, this one will be out on Pi Day on March
Individual
14th. And I don't know if you can see the cover, but I absolutely I'm just in love with that energy at the airport. I've always wanted one of those
But you
moments.
can buy the individual
Yeah.
stories as ebooks now. They're available now as ebooks, the individual.
Yeah, they're out in ebook and audio now. And my narrators are amazing. Like, I love audiobooks. I have so much respect for narrators, and I got to choose these narrators, which is just like a rock star moment for me. But The Misconnection especially has Denise Williams and Jacoby Diem and like swoon all over the place.
Nice.
And
Diem.
right.
Wow.
Like they both did an amazing job, and all my narrators did. But I just love his voice so much. So anyway, those are already out. So The Misconnection, The Love Connection, and The Sweetest Connection in audio and ebook. And then Love and Other Flight Delays will come out March 14th. In print and ebook, but I don't think they're doing a compiled audiobook. I'm just rolling with it at this point. The anthology, The End of the World, is called Even If the Sky Is Falling. I think we get to reveal the cover soon, and it's gorgeous. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. So when Taj gives us the green light to share that, it'll be amazing. But that one will be out in May. And the other authors on that are Taj McCoy, Cherish Reed, Lane Clark, Sarah Smith, and Farah Heron. And so I think it's going to be just wonderful. It's all women of color, which is really cool to work with in terms of that space. And then my next novel will be out in September. I'm going to reveal the cover for that one in a couple of weeks. But if you've read The Fastest Way to Fall, it is Pearl and Cord's story, who are two of the side characters who were having a little background romance during that book. And this book takes place 5 years later. So it's a second chance romance, and you get to find out kind of what happened to them. I just told my husband I'm a little worried that it's just like pining and hand brushing and then explicit sex scenes. So I'm kind of okay with that though. So they're fun.
If you didn't learn anything else, now Denise Williams writes very spicy.
Oh yeah, I already knew that.
so I mean, for everybody else, if you didn't know.
So that one will be out September 19th. It's called Technically Yours. And in that one, he is a software developer who's become kind of a tech CEO, and he is volunteering with a program kind of like Girls Who Code, but to get kids who are underrepresented into tech and coding and computer careers. And then she is the new interim director. And then they have this whole history, but they can't be together because they work together. But then, romance reasons, they figure it out. So I love this story and kind of how people come back to love and learn to be vulnerable with other people, but also kind of have some fun along the way. And there's a sassy teenager in there. So I've had to do a lot of research with my college students to say, like, would students say this? And they're like, no. Like, would a 15-year-old say this? And they're like, no. So that's when I learned how old I am. But it's great to work with college students who can tell you those things.
That's very helpful. Very helpful indeed. I love it. So thank you again so much for joining us. Please tell everyone where they can find you online.
Yeah, so my website is denisewilliamswrites.com, pretty easy. And I'm on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter while it lasts, under Nick Will Writes, NIC Will Writes. And then you can find me an author, Denise Williams, on Facebook. And I have a writer group there that's pretty active. And that's where I do most of my Facebook work. And it is Denise Williams Juicy Readers. So we share our juicy reads that we've got going on. And so I'm also
Did you say juicy reads?
Juicy Readers, yeah.
Juicy readers. Okay, you said juicy readers. Okay.
Oh, yeah, we get some juicy reads in there too. I mean, it's all inclusive.
I'm feeling spontaneous, and so if you type juicy reads into the chat, you will be entered to win one of the 3 novellas, the digital novellas that Denise has written. So I will buy and send you one of those 3 of your choice if you type juicy reads into the chat. So and I did put Denise's website in the bottom of the chat, as well as if you want to purchase either Do You Take This Man or Love and Other Flight Delays. There's also the links to purchase those directly as well. So I'm going to choose one of the folks here who's typed in juicy reads. And
well, and as you're typing, if you visit any of my socials, like the link in my bio or you're on my website, sign up for my newsletter, you get a link to all the bonus content that I've written. And one of them is the extended love scene for the love connection. So I kind of fade to black at a certain point, but that bonus does not fade to anything. It's all there.
I like that. So, okay, wait a minute. So that was for which one is that?
That's for the love connection, which is the first one.
Okay, so the love connection, the first one. If you pick that one, then you'll be able to get that bonus material that's going to give you all the tea.
Or if you get another one, you'll still get the bonus material. And if you're just thirsty and want that little scene with no context, I'm not judging. But yeah, anyway, so I've got all those bonus stories, and I just released kind of an erotic novella that's for free for my subscribers. That's about 2 grad students keeping each other warm in the snow.
So let me real quick.
But that is so lovely.
Okay,
thank you.
So give me a number between 1 and 5, Denise.
3.
3. Okay. Okay, Mama Tony, you are our winner for the novella. So I will message you directly on Facebook, and you can tell me which one of those you want. And as a matter of fact, just message, send an email to me at connect@reeseryan.com. And I will type it into the comments here, and just send me that and tell me which one of those 3 that you want, and then I will, and which email address I should gift it to, and then I will send that to you. So thank you all for joining us this evening. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to the show, subscribe to the channel, and like this particular program. Our next person we're gonna be chatting with is gonna be D.L. White in 2 weeks on the 17th. We are going to be giving the readers exactly what they want and why she chose indie to be an indie author. And so we're going to talk about that and about some of her books. And she has a new book out, so you definitely want to make sure you check out that from D.L. White. So thanks again, y'all, for joining us for this evening. I will see you all in 2 weeks. Have a good night.
Thank you.